What it do, my crew, man? It's the life of a multifacet, and shout out to all my faceteers. Everybody that's a part of the faceteer gang. Man, for today's episode, I'm going to talk about how trash it is searching for an apartment in New York City. How trash it is searching for an apartment in New York City. I need y'all to sit back and relax and listen to this one. Because when I tell you that it is Insanity 101, 102, 103, and 104, and there's probably a few iterations that it needs as well, that's no exaggeration. And if you listen to some of my previous episodes, you probably heard me speak about bits and pieces of living in New York and my living situations and all that. But this is going to be the full rundown, the full episode on my experience of getting an apartment and how it's been as far as being able to still continue living in New York. So going straight into it, as I said, apartment hunting is one of the hardest pieces. And the reason why it's so difficult is because of how competitive of a market it is, and everybody wants to be in New York. The population of New York doesn't equal up to the density of the state from a geographical standpoint. Because if you look at plenty of other cities or other states in the world, there's plenty of states that are bigger than New York. Individual cities and more so rural states or areas that are bigger than New York as a whole. I think if you even look at like the diameter of Texas, it almost is going to like quadruple or 5 times the size of a New York as far as land, as far as like that piece. As far as people, you're going to have obviously more folks that live in New York, but there's just going to be so much competition that everybody's trying to get it by any means. Plus, it's the city that never sleeps. It's the one, it's the Big Apple. It's the one where everybody comes to be able to live out their dreams and just experience life in a different type of way. It's a place everybody wants to be. My experience of coming to New York, I told y'all that when I graduated college, I just wanted to be in a bigger city. Like my dream was to always be in a bigger environment, get away from where I was from, and then get out of Kentucky. Like I just felt that there was so much more of the world for me to see and experience. Specifically, when I thought about, I never really looked at international as much earlier. That's something that I look at now that I think would be really cool, but I didn't really travel a lot when I was a kid. So the only time that I would have time to travel was if it was for sports, or it may be because of a job that was taking me to another state, or I happened to if I had family that lived in another state, but I didn't really have a crazy amount of family that I was connected with that was outside of Kentucky. But those are the only times that I was able to even see outside of Kentucky, and those are really the only environments I probably would have thought about, especially when it came to living on my own or whatever my situation was going to be. And I knew for myself also, because of having the roommates through college, that I was excited to be able to have my own spot. Like that's what I really, really wanted, because I knew that even living with people, like I had a lit time doing it in college, but I just felt as if I wanted to be by myself and really experience what it meant to really sit with DeMarcus and learn and go through life and really just have that, like, that not have the distractions, be able to have my own space, just have my own privacy. I just wanted my own thing. And I'm a person in general that just likes having his own stuff. I like to be different, not just where I'm automatically trying to do everything that different than everybody else, but I just find excitement in not following what everybody else got going on. And usually the opposite of that is something I truly love. Like we think about phone wise, like I'm using the iPhone at the moment, but everybody knows that I'm an Android guy. I love my Samsung. Actually, when I came to New York, actually since college, I've always had 2 phones. Now I have like 3 and I have multiple numbers because of business and stuff like that. But the reason why I have the iPhone is because of the group chats. So it's just easier, like especially when in a place like New York or just in general when people's messaging you, it just group chats is easier. Being able to FaceTime, I like. If I'm on the Samsung, if I could FaceTime iPhone folks easily, I'd switch back in a heartbeat. So that's why I continue to have my phone. I still don't really use that one as much now because I've mostly used the iPhone. But it's still a phone that I'm not a fan of. But that's beside the point. What I was talking about, not to get too far off, is just being different in how I go about things. And that also came to my living situation. I was a person that wanted to stay in Kentucky, but also I was willing to challenge myself and see what else was out there because I knew that if I needed to come back or by any means, even if I didn't have family there, which that wouldn't have been the case, I would still know that environment and it would be easy for me to come back and adjust. But I said I lived with, have friends throughout college. My last couple of years, especially with my boys, Elijah and Isaiah, we had some fire times, and even just from living with my guy Jackson too during our last year of college. But specifically with the twins, because those are my guys where we stayed locked in. I mean, we had some great experiences all throughout college, and then even as adults. But that experience there, like I really got what I needed out of being able to experience living with some of your friends and stuff like that. But I would say like getting to New York, you had to go about it differently because when you're first getting started in New York, you actually can, knowing the process I know now, you can find your own spot, but it takes just a lot of homework and just a lot of sacrifice to be able to find that. So let me tell y'all about just my experience as far as moving to New York City. Again, so I'll run through it. But when I graduated from the University of Louisville, I was trying to figure out where I wanted to be. And I was looking at New York City as an option and just big in even San Francisco because of the school that I went to. So it was an academy online where it helped you to be able to get into the tech space. And I had a friend that went through that. And so that friend always wanted to be in New York City. But for me, New York City wasn't really something I ever thought about as far as living. You just always see it. And you're just like, hey, like that could maybe be a dope place to go to one day. But oftentimes you hear it from friends and family as like a stop for once you get retired or just having enough money in that standpoint. But at least for me, I always heard about like traveling in a big way. Even if it was just going to some of these different destinations, it's like you had to really wait a long time until you had a lot of money saved up. And it was something for these bigger cities where, I mean, many folks just waited until like retirement. So went through that. At first I went out before even going through that program when I graduated from University of Louisville, I'll probably say towards the end, like going into that summer and probably a little bit more further before the semester had ended, I was applying for jobs within the BDR role. So I'd been in sales with Sprint for, I told you, like 3.5 years. And so I wanted to be able to get into the tech realm, especially by seeing people that were involved in that space. I was like, okay, this is a bit different than having a friend that went through the program. I was able to understand that there was like a different sector in how sales work. So I was just looking at different options because I wanted to be able to make more money eventually. I didn't want to take forever to be able to get into a higher level role, whether that was management, whether that was continue to be an individual contributor. I just wanted to feel as if I wasn't stuck, but it can also move in a way that I needed to. And so was applying for multiple BDR roles at a company that I had ended up getting an offer from, but it was an extremely low offer. And I was just like, there's no way I can live in a place like New York City or some of these other bigger cities like that. And really, New York City was going to be a hit spot for me because, as I told y'all, even during the first like trip I did, time I went to New York City, like I just did like how the city and stuff looked and everything. And when I came for the second time, I was just like, which was actually later in the year, of the year that I graduated, then I was just like, oh, okay, I was really, really sold on it. But still was applying to jobs there and in some of the other bigger cities like San Francisco because those are going to pay more. And the company had offered me super low where I'm like, you can't even, that's not even a livable wage anywhere. And I'm just, Like, how am I going to be able to survive? I think it was maybe like $45,000. I'm like, coming out of college. I mean, I'm not saying that's a terrible salary, but I had 1 year when I was during college when I made that at Sprint. So I'm like, man, I'm gonna need some more dollars than that, especially if I'm going to be living in another city. And I just had other things I had to pay down. It wasn't the best situation. So, anyways, as I told y'all, I ended up leaving Sprint, and then when I left Sprint, I went back home to Richmond, Kentucky. So that's where my family's from. And I know that I mentioned that I hated. Well, say it. I did not want to move back home. I was not excited. I didn't want to live back in the city. I just wanted something new. I just did not like being back home. And I love seeing my family, but besides that, I just never feel like there's anything for me. And so even going back, like I just didn't even want to be outside, nothing. Like it made me feel as if I was stuck. But went through the Silicon Valley Academy program. And so that helped me to be able to get a job within the tech space. And so fast forward, as I told y'all, I had some friends that had lived in New York City. And so when I was thinking about moving, obviously that got pushed back because of the pandemic. And so after the pandemic would come to an end, or however, you got to think ahead of time about what exactly do you want to do? Because, I mean, yeah, we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to be, but you also have to imagine that you got to still, think about, or you have to almost like think in your mind that something's going to shift to where life is going to have to keep on moving. Like people are going to have to eventually be outside, communicate. Like there's no way that people ain't going to be moving. So you got to think about that ahead of time. And so when the friends had, did they thing and moved away from New York for a bit because everybody was just out of the city that could afford to be, they had mentioned about wanting to move back. And then so myself and another friend, we had all came together and we just kept it on the radar. And then we eventually were able to move. And so at the time, the friend's girlfriend was able to be in the area and then be able to see the apartment we ended up choosing. So there was a couple different apartment options. And the thing with New York, you have to show on your bank, you have to show from your bank statement how much that you're getting from your job, how much that you're getting per week. And you also have to be able to make like 40 times the rent, just crazy stuff. Then there's going to be like a deposit that you have and then a broker's fee. Because at the time, up until like last year, New York even had broker's fees. So it just really depended on how the brokerage was moving. So for us finding a 4-bedroom, it was a hard process because you have multiple people that wanted to be able to again move to New York City. And the pandemic, I mean, before that, you had so many people doing it. And during the time that we ended up moving, which was around 2021, that's when you had more people probably anticipating that they want to move, given the prices are going to be lower and given when things do pop off, that's what everybody's trying to be. So we were looking at multiple spots. A friend of ours was just checking all the time, and he was just more so the person that was like keeping things together, and came across a really nice spot, and we all ended up agreeing on it. So for New York City, my first apartment, this was with friends. We had a 4-bedroom living out of Kentucky, was paying $14.25 a person. So y'all probably like, man, that is expensive as hell. Like that is insane. But when you're in a city like that and you really enjoying life, I mean, you'll look at it as just like, man, this is like, you got to do it. You got to do it because it's going to be an experience of a lifetime. And so if you don't move on it and you're not willing to take that risk, it might be a hard chance of you being able to find something else or even get into the city. And so I take that back. It wasn't $1,420, it was $1,400. So we paid $1,400 for the spot, each person. So like I said, you get to New York City, like you're just finding a way to get there. And if you're going to pay, let's say in some other states, $1,500 to $1,800 probably at the time for your own spot, even though it can be like a 1-bedroom or however, like you're probably going to pay a little bit less if you can be in a place like New York where it can be a vibe for you. Some people you're like, hell no, but for me, it made sense. So ended up living in New York, moving to Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn in Cobble Hill. And so, for those that aren't familiar with Cobble Hill is like a nice, wealthy area. It's expensive over there. Like there was houses or brownstones behind us that were like $1 million brownstones. So, I mean, you're going to be spending money, especially in that area. But to be able to find a spot we did for 1,400, like that was smooth. I mean, it was like a bachelor pad. You had the kitchen, open kitchen. You had the rooftop, which is actually smooth. It was like a nice little patio. I mean, that's when we'd have parties and everything. That was just the vibe there. And so we'd often have events, people come through, but it just, I mean, for that experience, I mean, from how folks speak to me, like that's not the traditional New York experience. Like being able to live like that is like luxury, especially being able to get that on your first go around in New York. So I enjoyed it. It was fun times. You live and you grow, and then the biggest thing is that when you look back, as far as taking that stride to do something like that, it makes you feel like you're on top of the world because it was it was taking a chance. You know, it was something that was going to be uncomfortable, and you knew it was something that you had no idea what the turnout was going to be, but you believe in yourself and you just trust to go through that process. So that was me getting my first, like coming to New York and getting my first experience of being in my first apartment outside of Kentucky. Now we fast forward. So lived there for 2 years, and then 2024 hits. And at this point was just trying to decide if it made sense to stay at the apartment that we had or everybody was going to do their own thing. So it got down to about 2 weeks before we had to move out of the apartment. Because at this point, they give you really, I would say 4 or 5 months in advance to kind of decide like if you want to stay at the apartment complex or not. But you got to give them a notice 1 month before you end up, moving. Or you gotta let them know 1 month before the lease ends if you want to stay there or not. And so you think about like 4 to 5 months is a good amount of time, but if you're waiting on other people to make their decisions, like you just never know because something could come last minute. So at first, like the roommates was like, hey, we possibly going to think about doing it again or however. And then clearly it got to the month period, and then everybody pretty much told me that they were not going to do it. And so I had to think to myself, like, what decision did I want to make? Right? Like,